Okay, so lately I've been spending a lot of time thinking about time and my individual place in time and the location that our species, the human species, has in time. My generation, how do I identify myself in relation to the time that I spend doing things? What does time mean to me? Why do I exist? I've been thinking a lot of big philosophical questions, a lot of existential ideas, and a lot of I guess growth, self-development, self-awareness. I've been spending a lot of time on that. I was wondering if I could put that into words to capture that, I suppose, so that I can later on look back at this. I first decided I wanted to write it down, and I still think that I would love to write this down properly one day, but I think it's too chaotic for me to write right now. There's no commas and periods and sentences fully formed. I just think things through and then say it as I think it. So what I've been thinking about is, so where are we in human evolution, for example? With all of the things that we know about how evolution works, a species evolves and mutates, and then the strong ones survive, and the ones that are strong will be able to procreate, and that's how that will work, right? That's what we learned from biology and from the way we believe in science. And when I say we, I say myself, but a lot of people, I think, want to believe in science. I feel like if you want to believe in that, if you choose to believe in science and you choose to believe in that's how evolution works, and that's how biology works, and why different species have the traits that they have, I think it must lead to a natural conclusion that humanity is currently ginormously fucking up their natural way of evolving. With the way that we use medicine, with the way that we're not using our physical selves in the way that our bodies are by evolution designed to be, because evolution isn't fast enough to keep up with the way that our society changes, the way that our culture changes, and the way that we live changes, the way we feed ourselves, the way that we communicate with each other, our healthcare system. People that would have died, and maybe in an evolutionary sense should have died. I'm not placing any moral judgments. I don't care about the moral judgments right now. I'm just wondering about the perspective. I'm interested in my own perspective. So thinking about that, we are helping people procreate who wouldn't naturally be able to do that. We are keeping people alive who naturally wouldn't be staying alive. What we're doing, evolutionarily speaking, I would feel, is we are devolving our species to become weaker in the body. But at the same rate, we are forcibly evolving to be stronger in the mind, which creates a very interesting balance where we have to strongly manipulate our environment in order to suit our weak, fragile bodies. The more we do that, the stronger that sense gets. We are, as a species, just continuously modifying our environment so that our bodies can grow weaker and our minds will grow stronger as a necessity in order to keep doing that. This is interesting, right? And our brains are impressively, incredibly, flexibly able to deal with that changing environment. And it's wild how we can change something so absolutely significant as the way we communicate. Like thousands of years ago, we started writing things down, which is already quite a spectacular leap, I would say. But nowadays we have you can make a phone call on your wristwatch if you'd want to. We've been creative enough to invent hologram phones. Oh, nice music. And it's just incredibly impressive, not just that we've been able to invent and think of these things, because that is impressive on the entire level of its own, but the incredible part is how we are able to adapt to that within a generation. Within one generation, the entire basis of our society is changing. And this is just so interesting, and that change seems to be accelerating, right? So think about, like, as far as I know, the Egyptian empire, the Egyptian realm, and the Mayan, and there's lots of things that are still huge, like Japanese empire. So many cultures in the world that have been hundreds, if not thousands, of years of growth and perfecting their traditions and their culture of the way that they bury their dead, and the way that they worship their deities, and the way that they do science on their own levels, and their social structures. And that's just thousands of years, hundreds and sometimes thousands of years of that development. And now we are not just making those developments faster, but we're also learning about those past things. We have such an incredible amount of knowledge and awareness, and yet I feel like so little. There's so much science, so much knowledge. There's knowledge about, we have biology and history, and my favorite one being philosophy. But there's so much science, but the science is so pinpointed into one subject. We're either a biologist, or you're a computer scientist, or you're a historian, and that's so cool. Like, it's incredible that you can spend your entire life focusing on just one thing. You can be a specialist in one tiny little aspect of one tiny little thing, but that's what I've been thinking about. That's what I'm talking about now, is the perspective. How does this perspective place itself in time? And I must give credit here to James Lovelock and the book Novacene, which has just been really helpful in my putting my mind in order for this. And I read it once and now started to read it again, because I think a lot of what I'm thinking and saying here would have a lot of overlap with that book. And the interesting part, I think, is that I am 2 generations younger than James Lovelock. I'm from a different generation. I grew up learning different things. I grew up experiencing different things. And I think that has a lot of influence on the way that I approach these thoughts and theories and philosophies, both due to my lack of life experience and my lack of scientific experience, but also due to just being from a different generation. I grew up, mostly at least, with computers. I grew up with phone calls and the internet and now there's even a new generation that grows up with constantly being exposed to TikTok and trends, and they have their entire own language and way of speaking that is even for me, and I'm not even that far away from them. And then just thinking about how there were many generations where growing out of your social class or into a different social class it was not an option to even think about or consider. And learning to read and write was for most of the world, and that's just getting there now slowly, to that it's a normal thing to learn about the environment, to learn about yourself and about your history. And I feel like when Lovelock says that we are entering a new age in the evolution of our species, and in the general sense in the evolution of the earth and the planet and the universe, I think he's right in that. And I think that on one hand, I would recommend everyone to read Novacene because it's beautiful. And on the other hand, I'm excited to see what the next part of our evolution is, and I'm excited to see what my next thoughts will be. So I'm gonna cap this here. I think 10 minutes is long enough for one video. Maybe I can even put it up online.